Hey everyone, my name is Michael Arndt. I'm a screenwriter. I helped to write the screenplay for Toy Story 3, and I worked on that script from 2006 to 2009, and those 3 years were just a complete nightmare of anxiety and confusion and just stumbling around in the dark and total creative agony. We just beat our head against the floor for like 3 years trying to get that story to work, and it was just horrible. So after the film came out, I just thought, like, no one should ever have to suffer like that again. So when I left Pixar in 2011, I put together this lecture about all the mistakes we made while writing Toy Story 3 and the lessons we learned trying to overcome those mistakes. So now I've taken that lecture and turned it into this video, and my hope is that if you're writing a screenplay yourself and you're going down blind alleys and walking into brick walls and just beating your head against the floor, maybe some of these lessons will be helpful. Now, I just want to add a quick disclaimer because I know I'm going to get roasted alive by people who will say that I'm trying to turn storytelling into a formula. So very briefly, this is not the only way to tell a story. Okay, you can tell a story any way you want. This is just a process that we went through and lessons that I learned while writing Toy Story 3. And I'm just hoping that they can be tools and not rules for anyone who is struggling with their own scripts. So I hope this is helpful. End of disclaimer. Okay, so before I go any further, I have to step back and explain how scripts get written at Pixar. Now, as you may have heard, it's a highly collaborative process. So even though I was credited as the screenwriter on Toy Story 3, the truth is there was like this whole team of people, writers and story artists that helped put the story together. So with all the help I had, in all honesty, like they could have hired a drunken chimpanzee to write the script and it still would have turned out pretty well. So what happens at Pixar is step one is you write the script and you do a couple of drafts just to get the basics of the story into place. But then pretty quickly, step two is that script gets turned into what's called a set of reels, which is a very rough version of the movie using hand-drawn sketches and temp music and temp dialogue. And when the first set of reels is finished, step three is you go into the main theater at Pixar and you screen it for the so-called brain trust of Pixar writers and directors. So when I was there, the brain trust was Darla Anderson, Brad Bird, Brenda Chapman, Pete Docter, John Lasseter, Bob Peterson, Jeff Pigeon, Gary Rydstrom, Andrew Stanton, and Lee Unkrich, and last but not least, Ed Catmull, the founder of Pixar. So you screen your reels for the brain trust, and then you go into a conference room called West Side 1, and you have your story meeting, step 4. And for me, those story meetings were just incredibly great because at their best, they're like this total creative free-for-all where like everybody is helping you out and some of the smartest storytellers on the planet are just sitting around and telling you how to make your story better. And the key thing here is that no one is forcing you to change your story. Like everyone is just offering up their best ideas, and it's kind of up to the director to pick and choose which ideas he or she wants to use. So you have your story meeting and you get all these ideas about what's working in your story, what's not working, and then you have to go back to your office and write a new draft. And then the artists and the editors turn that new draft into a new set of reels, and the process repeats itself. You do draft, reels, meeting, draft, reels, meeting. So the stories at Pixar are like cathedrals. They're really the expression of a whole community rather than just a single individual. Okay, so with Toy Story 3, we made 7 sets of reels, which means we basically made the entire film from start to finish 7 times before it went to final animation. And if you'll allow me to get up on my soapbox for 60 seconds, this is just a great way of making movies because what it allows you to do is to beta test your story on the big screen in front of a real audience. So you don't have to rely on the notes of a handful of studio executives, right? You can just show the movie itself in a rough form and let an audience tell you what is working and what is not. So it's like software. You do version 1.0 and then you debug it. You do version 2.0, you debug it, and you just keep iterating your story until it works and you reach golden master status. Now, obviously, all films should not be made this way. You wouldn't make a Wong Kar-wai movie or a Terrence Malick movie this way, but I'm telling you, man, if you're trying to make a comedy or just a film for a general audience, the reels process is just an incredible tool for writing and refining your story. So the real hero of this video is not me, the hapless and blundering screenwriter, or even the Pixar Brain Trust. The real hero is the process itself, which is iterative, collaborative, and director-driven. But don't take it from me. Here's Steve Jobs and John Lasseter describing the reels process back in 1995.
Makes it so that we can look at those still drawings with scratch dialogue, scratch music, sit back, watch it on a big projection video, and that film will tell us if it's working or not. If it's working in our story reels, when we animate it and put the colors to it, it's going to work even better. If it's not working in the story reels, the animation won't save it.
In essence, it lets us beta test and iterate our film before we make it. Totally different than live-action filmmaking. And we believe it's one of the reasons that the hit rate can be substantially different.
In essence, it lets us beta test and iterate our film before making it. Like, that is the heart of the Pixar method, and there's no reason why live action films can't use the same process to refine and optimize their own stories. And if you want to learn more about this, you should buy Ed Catmull's book called Creativity Inc., because he's about 1,000 times smarter than me about all this stuff. So, end of soapbox rant. Let's go back to Toy Story 3. So when I got hired to write Toy Story 3 in 2006, no one at Pixar really had any idea what the story was going to be. And what happened was that the creative principals on the first 2 Toy Story movies went off and had a 2-day retreat. And this was Darla Anderson, Pete Docter, John Lasseter, Bob Peterson, Jeff Pigeon, Andrew Stanton, and Lee Unkrich. And for 2 days, they just kind of sat around and threw out a bunch of ideas. And eventually they came up with the foundation of a story. And so they came back to Pixar, and Andrew Stanton wrote up a 20-page treatment, and that's what got handed to me. And what that treatment had from the very start was just this rock-solid beginning, which was the idea that Andy had grown up and the toys were now facing this uncertain future. And then the toys decide to donate themselves to a daycare center, which initially seems great, but then they realize that it's not so great and they need to escape from it. And then the last thing they had, and this was crucial, they came up with this great ending, which was that Andy was going to give all his toys away to a little girl named Bonnie. So that's what we started with, and it was pretty basic, but the foundations were just rock solid. So I went off for about 2 months, and I wrote up a first draft, and pretty quickly that script got turned into the first set of reels. And the thing about first drafts is that they're always heartbreaking because you do the best job you can. Like, you go to the end of your abilities, you put everything into it, and you just want the world to love your first draft as much as you love it. But spoiler alert, right? Most first drafts just don't work at all, and Toy Story 3 was no exception. So the challenge in writing, right, is to how to go from your terrible first draft to a finished film. So that's what this video is about, is trying to get from your clumsy first draft to a finished story that really works. Okay, so what I'm going to do is break down the script to Toy Story 3 into 6 tentpole moments. And you'll see that even though we thought we knew how good stories worked, right, and we did our best when we put them together, these scenes from that first set of reels, they just didn't work as well as they should have. And then I'll talk about how we screened those badly written scenes for the Brain Trust and the feedback we got from them. And then I'll play the clips from the finished film, and you'll be able to see how we went from a clumsy first draft to the finished film. And this is something Pixar's never really done before, showing unfinished reels. And I just have to say that I'm incredibly grateful to Pixar for everything I learned while I was working there. And I hope they won't mind me using these clips so that other people can learn from them as well. So thank you to Pixar.